thank you all for coming. This is our second episode of Over a Brew, so we're still at the beginning of it. We're still on our AI chats, and obviously we've known each other from different circles, but today we have the opportunity to look at AI and strategy, which is very, sounds a bit evil, isn't it? But yeah, we're gonna hopefully be able to narrow down into what we're doing. But I thought it would be easier if we start our chat around this whole AI explosion that's happened. We were joking the other day in the office. Our colleague, I might have told the story before, so sorry if you've heard it. A colleague of ours has these ready meals every week, and he had the chicken tikka masala, but it wasn't just chicken tikka masala. It had protein in massive letters written on it. It was protein chicken tikka masala. And it's the same with AI now, right? Everything has AI in it. You buy your milk now, it has protein now. Every single product we engage with is going to have AI. So it's like a bomb just went off, right? And I don't know where exactly it's going, but we're hoping to get some insight from you in terms of how you see it developing. Obviously in education, within our FE context, but maybe even wider in terms of learning, how learning is going to happen. Rory and I have a joke. How long it actually takes us to start talking about AI. So the longest we've done it is 5 minutes, which it doesn't apply to this context because it is about AI.
Every meeting.
Every meeting, yes. We could actually start talking about chicken tikka masala and we'll end up with AI very quickly. But yeah, so let's start there. How do you see AI developing in education? What's your take on it? Is it a good thing? Do we need to start having, Terminator programs in our colleges? What do we need to do? What do we think?
I think I flick regularly between this is amazing and it's going to change everything to we're all doomed and this is the end of the world. I keep coming back to WALL-E. Have you seen WALL-E? The Pixar
I love
film?
WALL-E, yeah.
Where we're all sat there watching our VR, going to the beach in VR, eating out of a straw, and are we heading for that world? But yeah, honestly, I think if it was a graph of this is great and we're doomed, I'm like up and down on a daily basis. It's massive pros, but also I think major concerns, which we'll wait to see. I think where all that ends up being. Interesting though.
Definitely.
I think as well, it's been this year. You're almost on a treadmill. It is constantly changing, isn't it? And
yes.
You just feel as if you're constantly having to keep up. There's something new all the time, isn't it? So it is a bit on that treadmill with trying to keep up with what's out there and the skills we need, the skills we no longer need now. So, it can be a bit scary. Yeah.
It's exactly the same. I'm excited, I'm scared, all at the same time.
Yeah.
And usually, depending on what podcast I've been listening to on the way here,
Yes.
I usually walk through the door either like, wow, we're just, or like, oh my God, yeah, we're all doomed. So, yeah, I think I've heard the word, a phrase that's been coined, like the useless class. And I feel like I get scared about, will my kids be a part of the useless class, or what do they need not to be in the useless class?
Yes.
And the irrelevant part of society. So yeah, that's the part that scares me. And then other things like they excite me, So yeah,
everything's happening so fast, isn't it? And you see what these big companies are doing, and now the bigger players in sucking up all the good ideas and all the good models, and we just have to pick all of that and make it make sense in education. So what do you think? How do you see the role of AI developing as we move on? You don't worry about thinking 5-10 years, even in the next year or so, like you said, Nicola, things are changing so fast.
Yeah.
How do you see the role of AI developing within our context, within our little bubble here? What do we think?
I think it's a case now you can't run from it. You've got to keep up with it, and I know there's still people that want to ban it from certain areas, but I just think that's naive now to think, even contemplate that you could do that. So we've got to educate our students on how to use it well, really. The AI literacy now is what I think a key skill that students need to have while they're studying. And we need to make sure that they're taught that in college, so that they have the skills to use it, appropriately and ethically. Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely, our role, responsibility, job as educators, isn't it? We have an ability, and I like to think sometimes of like a little Venn diagram in my head of things I can control, things I can influence, and things I have no control or influence over. And I can't control what Google or OpenAI or Meta or any of them do, but we can control what we say to our students, what we say to the fellow colleagues, and in some way influence things like Welsh Government policy and other, bits and pieces that affect us. But I think we've got that job now. I think that is really important to, address it, harness it, use it well, and control what we can control, which is the message that we deliver to our people, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, part of getting that buy-in from others is all about the stories that we're telling, how we communicate what's important and why it's important. And I kind of think about the way I try to explain it sometimes in meetings or in other external events. I guess that it is like electricity, and we wouldn't want to be a college without electricity. It is like a utility, and it's the new utility that's going to empower people, and we might work differently, be more productive, save us time, repurpose our work to tasks of higher value, whatever. But we can't, like you said, Nicola, we can't not be a part of that.
No.
And that would be a mistake. In fact, doing nothing is a mistake.
Yeah.
But the pace of change is frightening, and I think we're over the past 50 years, obviously we're all aware now that change occurs much more frequently. It's usually in bigger waves, and I think we've got to expect a future like that. And what part we play, in further education then is like, what does the future look like? And what do we need to do right now to be part of that better future and to help those young people who come to us to have a better future?
100%.
I think, just a question, I suppose, in terms of what you think about it. The inclusive piece, the accessibility of AI for learners, I'm really interested in. You've got, we at Bridgend, kind of serve a lot of students, I'm sure you do as well, who don't have access to internet at home, don't have access to devices, don't have reliable access to technology at all in their personal lives. Yeah. How do we sort of do our bit, I suppose, to prevent that gap, the digital poverty gap widening with AI? Because if you can pay for ChatGPT Pro, if you can pay for Gemini and all these tools, you're so many steps ahead potentially of somebody who can't even access a device in the first place. I'm interested in that. What are your thoughts?
It's such a good question. I mean, we had quite a few chats about that, and it's this digital divide that now has a new AI, element to it. And for us, it's trying to find tools that are free to the user, that are good enough to build those skills. And how you tackle that, like you said, which route you take to it, it's different for all of us. But for us, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Rory, but we're trying to find a down the middle solution that is not the best thing you can have, but it's good enough to keep you safe and to help you engage with AI in a meaningful way. I don't know if for us it's Copilot at the moment, and we're trying to build those skills around Copilot. But
and obviously there's free version of that, and then there's the paid for version. So I think coming back to the question of what tools would you advise, and there are free tools. But when you get right down to the fact if somebody doesn't have internet, or doesn't have a device, that's a foundational problem. Which I think all of us have, as institutions, have tried to address that through COVID and use the money appropriately to. I mean, we're distributing more devices now on long-term loans than we ever used to. Need close to 2,000 a year every year going out to learners. So. But then there are learners who don't even have the internet at home, and that becomes an even bigger challenge.
And we're discussing space as well as having internet. I remember during the pandemic, I would teach a class, and my learner would be in the middle of his living room with his sister and his mum. and his dad was watching daytime TV in the background, and he had to do maths. So, you know, you have those issues, like you said. I don't think there's an AI solution to it, but it's, in my opinion, if you would make AI free and easy to access for the user, and like Nicola mentioned before, build that literacy. For me, that's where that's the most you can do, I guess, in that situation. You know,
and I think it can be used to narrow that gap as well. You know, when you think some people, you know, they've got the luxury of private tutors, educated families, you know, so they've got proofreaders that can check all their work for them. They've got help, you know, on hand 24/7 at home, you know, whereas a lot of kids don't have that, but with AI they can have that, so that can sort of, you know, narrow the gap there, isn't it, and provide everybody with that critical assistant that they can draw on 24/7 and things.
That's cool.
I definitely think there's some in my mind when I keep thinking about the opportunities for learners. Then, you know, I always keep thinking of probably three things. You know, firstly, that personalised adaptive learning, third piece. The second one, accessibility, and the broadening of accessibility, given that it might cause an additional digital divides with the actual costs. And the third one then is an increase in engagement, because if you're suddenly able to provide that type of tutoring beyond the classroom, then suddenly that more abundant educational experience for everyone. And now I have got a personal tutor who's on my phone in the house. But it does come right back down to the AI literacy thing, and that starts with awareness and understanding, doesn't it? And if nobody has an awareness or understanding, and we're all kind of working on that one, that's the first port of call, isn't it? Raise awareness, raise understanding, and hopefully people can apply it. And then you get to that sort of second tier, you know, how do you apply the tool or the knowledge now that you are aware?
Yeah. It's such a good question, because it's so deep. It has so many implications, isn't it, in terms of, if you mention just accessibility and digital divides, you're then trying to find other contextual solutions that might have reach into areas of college that we might not be ready for yet. How do you see it, Scott? What do you have an answer to it? Or?
No, I definitely don't have an answer to it. And again, coming back to my things I can control and things I can't control, you know, I think like globally that's a huge issue in terms of you know, global south, and how connectivity around the world, you know, how do we avoid becoming like a 2-tier 3-tier society?
That's right.
Do I think that FE colleges have it is within FE colleges' control to address that in their communities? Yeah, I do actually. I do think we have the ability to influence that digital divide within the communities that we serve, and I think that's important for us to think about in the context of, you know, before we run, we need to be able to make sure everybody can walk.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think, you know, going back to sort of just not talking about AI a minute, but just talking about, you know, providing education to a wider or a global audience, because we are local, you know, we operate within our communities, like you said, and we have a responsibility to help. If you think of something like the Khan Academy then as a platform, you know, that is almost borderless. You know, the community is global, and you have, you know, maybe children in Afghanistan who don't have access to a classroom because maybe it's outlawed by the Taliban, they don't have anyone teaching them, are able to access a global platform and get qualifications and education. So technology's power to create that abundance of opportunity for education, that's just something that's incredible. You factor AI into a platform like that, which is there, you know, and they obviously had access to GPT before anybody else. They've got the Khan Migo, you know, suddenly there's an AI personal assistant that can assist that person in a different country. So now they've actually got a bit more than just a platform to learn from. They've actually got a virtual assistant. So I think, you know, if you were really to think, I mean, into the future, what should our colleges be thinking about? I mean, I would suggest is to think even broader than local community. You know, what can you offer beyond? Obviously, community is essential, but actually there may be opportunity beyond
contributing to that global community.
Definitely.
Right.
And I think, you know, the big picture is there are disadvantaged people in other countries who don't even have any form of classroom, beyond the sort of cost implications, and there are free tools. So, you know, if you can get if children in Africa are growing up with a mobile phone, wow, like, you know, this is a game changer. It's
very much in line. I don't know if you've listened much to Donald Clark on this he's been writing books on AI in education for a while, and he has this type of approach. Is like, do you think someone from a absolute impoverished area, do you think they care about the ethical considerations of how that's been trained if they have access to a tool that can do ABC for them that they didn't have before? And obviously the answer is no in their situation. So that type of pragmatic approach and how we contribute to the global community, I think it's going to have big implications in terms of what we do in the nitty gritty of how we develop you working with AI. Is it okay if we maybe narrow into that a little bit, see what we do? Because you've all mentioned, implications in terms of training students or literacy, staff. I think we mentioned that a couple of times. Implication around policy, dare I say, and the direction we take in terms of maybe bridging that gap or finding solutions that work for more people. I don't know which one you want to pick up. I would dare say leadership as well. Strategic approach to what do we do with AI? How do we see it functioning in our organizations? It'd be really interesting to see, maybe how you view it in your own colleges. I know it's a big thing. Pick one of those. Okay, you don't have to answer all of those. Whichever route you want to take in. If you want to go down how the leadership will approach it, or staff training, or students, it's up to you. I just think there's so much to talk about, and they're all talking about Venn diagrams. They're all linked. Yeah. They're all overlapping at some point.
I think with us with staff training, I've sort of looked at starting small, so choosing a select few tools,
right,
looking, doing things like data protection impact assessments on those tools, checking what the age restrictions are on the tools, how we get over the consent issues and so on. So, rather than sort of let staff use whatever tools, we're trying to direct them to Lovely. Tools. So Copilot is one that we're pushing in the college to get staff using it, because we need staff to be using AI tools so that they can help educate students then, because we still have staff that have never used, any sort of chatbot yet, so, and then, we're asking them to educate students on what they can and cannot use AI for in their assessments and so on, when really at the moment, they have no idea of what's possible, what the students can do. So
don't get me started on assessments. Did you see the University of Reading study that came out on take-home exams? What was it? 32 out of the 33 AI entries weren't caught by markers, and they all did better than students. Like you said, what we expect teachers to do in terms of teaching and assessing, it's like, I don't know if we're ready for that, especially with those type of assessments where you can take an exam home and do the work. Yeah. So, and
already I feel some of the students are ahead of us, So
if they haven't caught them with those take-home exams, how many didn't we catch within our own structures?
I mean, coming back to, I guess, the leadership thing that you mentioned, Tib, I think, I kind of see this, obviously, AI development as part of digital transformation. Essentially, it is digital transformation, but a new type. And inside digital transformation, in my mind, it's separated into two things. And I think you're right there, digital leadership. Yeah. And that's critical. And digital capabilities. So, we're talking about sort of the abilities of staff. How do we assist in that awareness, the training, the knowledge, the skill development, the support? But without digital leadership is just one, it's like a left arm without a right arm. So I think the digital leadership part of it, to steer through really uncertain waters, and that is where we're at. And it is difficult, and I guess each of our institutions are trying to do this without really a lot of steering or navigation from government, because they don't really know either. In fact, nobody really knows. If somebody was to say, well, what should our learners be learning for a future workplace? Nobody knows. Nobody has the answers to those things. Certainly not us, and certainly not government. I don't think anybody knows what future skills learners would need, other than they're probably going to be broad skills, because they're going to have to keep learning and reinventing themselves regularly. It's probably nothing too specific, because they'll have to change their job more regularly. I've had to reinvent myself once in my working life. Was a musician, became a teacher, and now working in education. So I only had that one sort of at the age of 32 reinvention. 10 years working there, now 20 years working here. So that might happen for our children every 5 to 10 years. And it's easy maybe to invent yourself when you're 16 and 17. That's what you do. That's what 16, 17 years do. You invent yourself. But to do that at 30, and then do that at 40, and then do that at 50, you know, it's like, how are we encouraging people to have the mental flexibility to cope with reinvention? What is is it feasible? So the skills that really, you know, the learners of the future probably need is to be really adaptable, flexible, to be able to learn new things, to be able to forget what they've learned, because that's a barrier to learn new things. Well, I think if I know it, I don't need to learn anything. So you might need to forget something because things have moved on. And I think we're at that situation now with AI literacy. I think it's going to be an important thing, because staff have to learn a new thing and they have to forget the way they did it in the past. And those are like the real fundamental problems. And that's a leadership problem.
I agree.
I think the really interesting thing about AI as well is that I was at an event last night actually where they were talking about digital transformation, digital leadership, and they were talking about the idea of just dropping the word digital, because this is this is not something for IT teams or for digital teams or for you know, this is leadership now in its modern leadership. I think that's what they ended up kind of calling it in the event last night, and it really resonated with me actually, because
that's a great point. Because actually we're all going through the transformation of society. And it is, and it's fueled by technology and technological disruption, but it is actually a fundamental transformation of society, and education is just part of that, as is healthcare. You know, there's so many aspects that are going to be influenced by that. You're spot on, Scott. I think it's a good idea. It's organizational transformation and societal transformation and economic transformation.
Modern leadership.
I think a lot of people use that term still with digital attached to it, because well, I feel sometimes I put digital in front of it on purpose, because I feel like I need to remind people that they need to consider that as well, which, like you said, we probably shouldn't, but we do, don't we? We need to reinforce that, because sometimes that misses from the narrative. And I think I overdo it. I need to stop adding digital to stuff like that. Cool. So in terms of what we do, for example, Rory and I were talking about the Copilot 365 that can give you access to the Microsoft Graph, and you can see what's inside of your organization and ask it questions about it. And when we started talking about it, not only our staff weren't ready for it, because they were just starting to explore it. And, you know, you can draw an analogy between what we're doing with Welsh Government. We're all exploring and trying to find our way, right, in this journey. But the other one was, is our data ready to have a look at it in a meaningful way and so on? There's so many, you know, drop down type of issues where you arrive here and you think, oh, I have no idea where to go next, because we need extra change. So how do you see, let's say in the next year or so, what are your priorities in terms of what do you want to change first? Because there's so many things we need to look at. What would you like to change first? What do you think it's that type of, has that maybe that knock-on effect that will help develop change? Like Rory said before, I wish we have a module, by the way. You know, we can't decide what we're teaching. I wish we had a module. We teach it half a year and then go, forget all of that. We're moving on to a new thing. I would love to have that. I think sometimes we need to do that with staff and say, we've done this and don't worry about it. You've put all that effort into it. Now you have to change your mind. I don't know. Do we have to focus on resilience rather than just tech skills? What's your opinion? What do you think as the next stages in terms of AI-enabled digital transformation? Big questions again. Sorry about that.
Yes. Again, I think it's educating, you know, and developing the skills in learners and staff, really. So I think for us, you know, the focus will be to develop workshops, support and so on for students, you know, so that they become more confident with what they can use it for, what the clear guidance on what they can and what they shouldn't be using it for as well. And for staff as well, to see, you know, how they can maybe make more use of it in their lessons as well, because I think the more introduction students get to it, the more they get used to working with it, and it's part of everyday life, because it is going to be part of, you know, if it's not already, it is going to be part of everyday life. So, you know, we need, as educators, we need to be bringing it into the classroom, so that students get more opportunities to engage with it and interact with it in a controlled sort of manner, that where, you know, they can ask the questions, the staff can work with them, you know. So I think for us it will be about improving skills and knowledge this year in using the tools and maybe, you know, how it can be used for assessments. You know, we've looked at sort of AI assessment scales, you know, for us to use, because students, you know, the feedback from students is that they just do not know what they can and cannot use it for.
Yes.
You know, some lecturers will say, absolutely no, you cannot use it. But then we're disadvantaging some students then because they need to use it maybe for, you know, ALN needs and things. So, you know, but I think they need a lot more guidance.
Yeah.
But so do staff.
I love that.
And it's also gonna, if not already, it's baked into things like Microsoft Word. I know it is now in Google, in Google
so you
Docs.
can't
It's
ban
hard
because-
not to use it. You know, it's just there. You just click a button and it sort of rephrases a sentence for you, and it's just there. But yeah, we've looked at assessment skills as well. It's it's a bit of a minefield.
And how you can bring it into an assignment as well.
Yeah.
So maybe rather than, I don't know, internet research, maybe you have a debate with an AI chatbot and, you know, have the two arguments in a critical assessment, you
That's
know.
cool.
So bring in AI into assignments as well.
So tell us more. What do you think? How are you envisaging these assessment skills to work? We haven't looked at that much. I'm really interested in that. I haven't seen anyone use yet assessment skills with AI.
One of our lecturers, Pete, who's always kind of, you know, first and foremost one of the people who puts his hand up for digital stuff. He's done an action research project actually this year.
Okay.
And he's taken, I forget who the original authors are, but there's an assessment scale which is about 5 points. It's like no AI, and then you can use it for proofreading, you can use it for sentence structure, or you can use it entirely, you know.
Yes.
He's added one, I think he's adapted it a little bit, and he's done a bit of a research project over the year with his group of students, and he's planning on rolling that out to his department next year, and we're looking at incorporating it into some kind of central guidance as well. But I like the idea of it because you've got, you know, it's clear for the learners.
Yeah,
that's the key, isn't it? Because, you know, I mean, I'm not entirely clear what I'm allowed really to use AI for. You know, if I'm writing a policy, if I'm writing, you know, fundamental Welsh government, am I allowed to put that through Gemma?
Yeah. I think that I shared that assessment with that was mentioned. I spoke at the Policy Forum for Wales, and a lady from Leeds pulled that one up as part of a research, which obviously similar research to what your colleague found. But yeah, I thought that was a really good idea. But then that, like you mentioned, Nicola, it comes right back down to what is the capability of the staff to rethink their assessments and to build it in and to decide, well, this assessment isn't appropriate for AI, but this one is. So, you know, the staff skills under
and the authority, I don't know, you know, because we are governed by, you know, the qualifications that we do, and the
are
way
we
we
able
assess,
to say,
are we able to?
Yes, you're right.
And would that be approved by the awarding body? You know, that type of assessment. So we do need them to be involved. I think coming back, stepping outside, I guess, of the teaching and learning, and coming back to the question that you asked about that, what potentially are the next steps? For me, at an organisational level, and I know we're looking at this, working with JISC, is basically, as you mentioned, too, is our data, and what is the level, they call it a data maturity assessment framework, and I think, you know, maybe in colleges in the past we and it might be different in your institutions, but we kind of think, oh, data sits with our MIS team, you know, that is where it is, but
data's there.
But data is everywhere, and for our people and culture team, then that sits in iTrent, you know, and so I think there's never really been anyone at the college sitting above everything who looks at all data, and really tries to assess, you know, how well structured, how clean, how well organised, are we archiving properly. Is our data, especially if Copilot starts interrogating your internal documents, are your internal documents well structured? So I do think, you know, in order for us to utilise AI as a tool really, really well, we have to say, are the foundational aspects of it, including data, well structured so that we can profit off AI as best we can. If your data is a mess, and I've heard in working with partners then that they've done work with, say, the NHS, done work with other educational institutions, and they were saying that in instances where they'd undertaken a project where they're using, say, predictive analytics, if the data is a mess, then that work is a lot of work because they've got to sort the data. So it sort of it becomes our responsibility to ensure that our data is really good, so that then we can use AI better than we could have if it is a mess. You can only imagine. We did a big cleanup last year of our SharePoint. There were documents on there from 2013, 2014, and we had to get them all off because, if AI starts interrogating multiple documents across 10 years,
we get confused.
We're in trouble. Yeah. So that's definitely on our radar for the next year, is what is the quality of our data, where is it sitting, and if AI is to interrogate it, is it in a good place before that starts? But that's definitely up there.
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of assessment, just to bring it back to the assessment skills, I've read a couple of documents on it, and I think I saw your colleagues post, I think on X as well, about it. But the issue is, like Nicola said, what are we allowed to do? That's why I was wondering if you actually done something, to get to the point of what can we do practically for whatever qualification, and like you said, how does that intersect with the confidence, capability of staff? Will people go to 0 on that scale to say, I don't want any AI because I'm doing it this way? So I think it's going to be a big persuasion type of endeavor to try and get people to see the benefits of having AI-enabled assessments as well as TNL type of developments, which I think it's going to blow up next year. I think everyone's going to focus on assessment. So
I really hope, I hope it starts that conversation about assessments that are not fit for purpose, and actually brings the conversation around to what are we actually trying to do by assessing. Why are we writing 10,000 word dissertation essays, whatever they are, instead of more authentic assessments that actually tease out whether or not somebody understands something. So I hope it sparks that conversation.
I think the trust, because it's about trust, isn't it? AI is undermining the trust in assessment, which fundamentally undermines the trust in qualifications. And essentially qualifications are just used as a tool to benchmark somebody's ability. And how do you now do that with AI? If everybody's empowered by AI, then their ability is better, surely, and suddenly, this is where I think research has proven that sort of people of lower ability profit more from AI because it can enhance them to a greater degree than maybe somebody who's more educated. So it's a great leveler for sure. But how do you then, you're right, what is assessment then? And if it undermines trust, that's a problem, isn't it?
I think that's also really interesting in the context of what we were talking about earlier with the global, assessment communities. If I've studied as a learner, 30 hours, 50 hours, 100 hours on Khan Academy, and I understand the concepts that I've learned through that, do I deserve a qualification as much as somebody who spent 30, 50, 100 hours attending an FE college in person? I think that all comes around to what are we for? What do we actually do now in this new kind of world as an FE college?
I think you made a great point, Scott, because that really should be the focus of every institution. Is what is the purpose of an FE college? What is the what is the target customer? Who are we serving? And in a world whereby, it's my own personal opinion, but in a world whereby I think as adults we will need to learn more often. We will need to reskill and upskill because pace of change is so fast. We have to, as we mentioned earlier, reinvent ourselves and do something different. The value of a further education institution for adult education becomes critical.
Massive.
And let's be honest, I think over the last 5 to 6 years we've focused less on those who are adults. It's like 16 to 19. But I think our value really lies in the adult community and in helping businesses reskill, upskill. So I think that's to me that's a tremendous opportunity for a further education institution. How do we serve that community who need to reinvent themselves and relearn?
And also to kind of not stop, but the idea that businesses have got the answer. We go out and we ask, what skills do you want our learners to have? Well, I'm not sure that's the right question. The question is, we are potentially more able to tell them what skills we think they'll need in the future, train our people to go into those routes of employment. So I think that's a little bit of a change in tack as well.
And if there are, in this part of the world, a lot of small to medium enterprises that they might not actually have anybody looking 5 to 10
Yes.
years ahead. And if we don't know what the skills are required for in 5 to 10 years, I'm certain they might not know. Because how digitally savvy are them? How far down the organisational transformation route are they?
Exactly.
You know, if they're not very far down that road, then they might have no clue.
You're just describing the student feedback type of process we usually have, isn't it? We ask students what they would want, what they need in the future, and we take that sometimes as gospel. It's the same thing. Are they informed? It's the same type of route. The feedback is valuable, but is it as informed as we want it to be to make those changes? And I think that's it's the same issue. I think I've heard a lot of people, it's this assumption that the knowledge is in the room. We know everything we need to know, and we know what our needs are. So just do that.
Yeah, I think with AI, the knowledge definitely is.
Isn't? That's what I mean. It's that's the biggest gap now. Cool. Should we have a break and then come back? We've been chatting for a while, by the way. It's 25 past.
Yeah, good.
I've been enjoying that.
Yeah.
We'll have a nice 10, 15 minutes and then come
great.
back to it.
Yeah.
I've
Oh,
enjoyed,
you get into it.
I enjoyed that. It's
Yeah,
nice,
I
isn't
mean,
it?
That's good. That's what it's supposed to be. Well, if anyone's missed this, because we're going to cut all this bit out, we've just talked about wrecking $250,000 grand pianos. Not us. No one involved here, by the way. Cool. Well, in the second part, I know we've kind of discussed big picture and kind of how we see AI developing and maybe a strategic view on staff development and assessments and all of these important things. I thought maybe we could boil it down a little bit with what kind of AI solutions we've chosen so far and what you're hoping to do with them in the near future. I don't know if you want to mention some of the projects you've been involved with. I know each of our respective colleges have been involved with some of the Trailblazer projects from Welsh Government, and we've all tried slightly different things. So it'd be really cool to talk about that. Actually, let's start with that one. What have we done with these Trailblazer projects? What have you tried that's new? How's it going? And what do we hope to do with them? Who wants to make a start of this one?
I'll start then.
Oh, Scott was on the spot there.
Sorry, because
They just looked at me.
Scott's done well with this.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know. So our idea was to create or to redesign the student portal. So the intranet, the thing that opens when students log onto devices, and to turn that into a one-stop shop for their learning journey, essentially. So they currently had one which was kind of out of the box tribal version, and it's been redesigned from the ground up. So it now shows all stuff it did before: their timetable, their targets, their praise and concern notes, attendance, that sort of thing. But we've built in a capability for them to query their own data using natural language, using Google Gemini's kind of back end.
Cool.
So I think coming back to kind of something that we discussed earlier, a big part of this has been making sure that the data is in a decent format, in order to be able to get something meaningful out. And, we've been on that journey for years. We've been making sure that, all praise and concern notes are put into EBS, so that, obviously that registers are up to date, that timetable and information is up to date. If there's a change of class, or a change of room or a change of lecture, that it gets put into EBS so that it's all tracked, and, kind of in the system anyway. So that's a journey, which we've been on. But there was still quite a bit of work to do to be able to query that. So the idea now, they go on and they can type in things like, what lessons do I have this week? What my targets? When do I have, things to do by? And then the kind of next steps of that, if you like, we would like to get Markbook integrated into it.
Cool.
So, what assignments do I have coming up? What am I on track to achieve? That kind of thing. And also some level of either LMI or careers information kind of in there. So, what can I do after this course? And it will kind of know what course they're on and, kind of know key descriptors about the course. And then it can ask out then to the large language model to find, kind of relevant information that it'll pull back and display to them. So it's ongoing. Trailblazer project wise, we managed to. So we were really lucky. We hired a software developer. It was built internally, and we've managed to extend that contract for another year.
Nice.
Kind of made a business case and did that. So we've got that person there as a resource for another 12 months, which is great. So we can continue to develop that and hopefully build on it. into next year. But yeah, it's been fun.
That's a great approach. I remember, I don't know if any of you remember, I think it was about 3 years ago, I think at DigiFest, JISC were trying to do something like that in terms of a tool for HE students. I think they were looking at the time to keep on track of their learning and so on. So I think that sounds like a lovely, lovely idea, and it's got legs, doesn't it? It can be applied to so much more. It does live in tribal, though. So
it does live in tribal. Yeah, we have tried to tame tribal, which I think were your words. Yeah,
taming tribal. Yes, doesn't want that.
Yeah.
Cool. That sounds great. Nicola, what have you been working on?
Well, our Trailblazer project was working with a company called Century Tech. So we were interested in using some personalised learning systems. We had investigated the platform beforehand. We'd seen it at DigiFest, I think, and we'd had demos and so on. But it was so, that it just wasn't aligned to our Welsh curriculum. So, it was very well used in England, in other areas of the UK, but because we've got a set of qualifications, it wasn't aligned well, and that was the feedback from the tutors, that they didn't want to be introducing students to courses if some of it was relevant, some of it wasn't. They would need it fully aligned. So the project gave us the opportunity then to work with Century to map their current resources and for them to build new resources, so that we had resources then for WJC, Maths and English, and also the Essential Skills Wales for application number, communication and digital literacy, so that we could try out the personalised learning environment, see what students thought of it, staff, and see if there is an impact on workload, impact on learning, and obviously impact on digital skills. So that's where we're at the moment, that we've the resources have been mapped, so it is suitable now for Welsh colleges. They have made the interface bilingual, but they are looking at resources, making them bilingual, but that is a much bigger, more expensive job then.
Of course.
But there must be an AI tool that can be used now for that they have looked at for transcripts and so on. But it's not, it's about trying to make the resources bilingual as well. But the interface, they've got that. We've been working with them for that. So yeah. How
did the personalisation thing go? I'm really interested in that, because I think we'll find by the end of this that we're all trying to personalise learning, or the learner journey through this. Did that work okay for people?
For us, we're still sort of working on that, because when we first started, to get the personalisation, you need the students to do an initial diagnostic. Now, the initial diagnostics weren't set for the Welsh qualifications at the start when we first started with the company. So now we're at the stage where the initial diagnostics are now, we're happy with them. They've been checked with the subject leaders and so on. And from September now, we'll be able to use those initial diagnostics with the students, which means then their learning pathway can be set straight from from the get-go, and the teachers then can monitor progress. There's interventions then that they can sort of intervene when they need to support students. They can issue different lessons if they want all students to work on something before the next lesson. They can issue those as assignments, but otherwise the students can follow their personalised pathway then, and they have which will be different for every student, working on their strengths and weaknesses and areas for improvement. So the feedback from the students has been very positive. So they've enjoyed using the platform. I think the staff have wanted this initial assessment, because without it relies on the staff setting up the assignments, which adds to their workload, if we're honest. But hopefully when we've started now from September again, with where we've got the initial diagnostics from the start, then it should help with workload, and obviously everything's automated with the marking. So
it's really interesting.
Is it self-direct in the sense that, is it something they do outside of class or in class?
We've sort of looked at both options. So some lecturers might get students revisiting the platform for 10 minutes at the start of the lesson as an introduction. Others then have set nuggets, they call their little lessons. They've set them for homework, you know, in readiness for the next session. Cool. Yeah. But I think what we found in FE is that, particularly for GCSE maths and English, you know, it's a course that you condense it into 1 year anyway, you know, because you know most of the students do it as a 1 year resit, so time is quite precious in the classroom. So a lot of them use it as an independent study tool then, and for revision and things. So
I think when we discussed this last time, the thing I think is really impactful about that is that if you get that right, every college can benefit off the work that you've done.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think coming back to, I guess, some of the challenges with the Trailblazer initiatives then is, and ourselves in a similar vein to you, that there's a lot of work developing those resources and those changes, isn't there, for you over the past 6 months? It's very difficult for you to feedback right now on how useful is that development. Maybe in a year's time you can really evaluate it and then say, well, yeah, that was time well spent and it's successful. But it's very tricky, isn't it, to meet, I guess, the demands or the requirements of reports. In that, we don't really know how impactful it is right now. But as with any pilot,
you've got to have outputs. And yes, we've mapped the qualifications. We've got the bilingual interface, but the impacts on learning, impacts on workloads, that's something that needs more longer term analysis, really.
Yeah.
No, it seems like you have the right approach, though. I think, especially for GCSE maths, it's always a struggle to find time to get learners through the whole of the content because it's so dense. So yeah, using it as an extension of that, it's really, really cool. I like that idea. I would have used it exactly for that.
They can use it on their phones, students, you know, so.
I think, you know, you've probably taken a similar approach to us in that you've gone and worked with a tech company that's an expert in that field and that is already established. Similarly, in our Trailblazer project, we established a kind of a strategic partnership with ICS AI, who are a company really that are kind of UK market leaders in conversational AI solutions for the public sector. So they do a lot of work with local government, health boards. They provide those types of chatbot solutions for the ICO. So we had met those probably in 22-23, and we'd started discussing some of the initiatives that they've been doing in education. They work with a new college, Lanarkshire, in Scotland, under a Microsoft grant to introduce a predictive analytics model, which intrigued me and what they were doing in that field. In other words, there were many companies that were creating a smart assistant or a chatbot, but these were doing something a bit above and beyond that. And Microsoft kind of confirmed that. So I sort of introduced them at the time then to John and Karen, who are now our principal and COO. And we started in 22-23 with a digital 2030 FE Capital Fund on building a smart assistant, which is just nothing generative AI about it, but just an AI assistant for the website, basically helping learner experience and recruitment. So we started that, and then of course the pilot project money came up, and it was like, well, can we continue that project? And in discussions with them, I'd been showing those what the Khan Academy had been doing, and Martin, the CEO, really thought that the future of AI in education is massive. So he was really keen then to undertake I guess a development build on a teaching and learning co-pilot, much like Khan and Migo. And he wanted to try and do that. I mean, nobody's ever really pulled it off, as far as I know, apart from the Khan Academy, and I think that's launching, you know, in 24-25 through Canvas, I believe, that LMS. So that was the challenge, and the, you know, Welsh Government initially at first, I think we were a bit too ambitious in what we were aiming for, because it is an ambitious project. It's like it's never been done, and it's still like, that's the scary thing about it. I still don't know, you know, how good it will be, but that's part of innovation, isn't it? Could fail. I don't think it will fail, but how good it will be, I don't know. And like you, I can't evaluate it right now. So we started building that teaching and learning co-pilot late, you know, November, similar time to you, Nicola. So we've had 6 months really developing something that's never been developed before. Really difficult to evaluate it at this point in time. But we do have all the sort of the platforms, and Martin discussed it really well, didn't he, in the case study video. He was sort of, they developed 3 different user interfaces. So they've got a teacher interface, a learner interface, and an administrator interface they had to build a content management system. So one of the big tasks for us was collating. We chose the School of Health and Social Care and Childcare, and a fabulous relationship with the head of school in that area, and he basically undertook the task of collating all the staff materials across maybe 8 program areas and over 20 courses across 4 campuses with varying teachers who all had their own individual resources. He collated all those resources, and essentially we've uploaded those to the ICS content management system, and that is where our internal resources will sit, and the AI interrogates the internal resources, and on occasion, if necessary, it will, under guardrails, it will go out and access different LLMs, so not just GPT, but potentially Gemini, whichever. And he's trying to do something really quite innovative in terms of the cost, because with it, as you mentioned, Scott, in your presentation, there's a cost attached to every query, a token, and he's looking at how the pricing models of all the LLMs. So consequently, if the question is something that could be answered by a free LLM, then the question goes to that LLM, maybe GPT 3.5, and then if it's a more complex question that requires... So he's trying to work those type of things out, and like they've got great relationships with Microsoft, so they're working with like the Microsoft Black Belt team, they call them, and I just want to see that team. I just want them to jump out like something from Pink Panther film, isn't it? And you know, we are Black Belt. But they've been working with us to try and develop something, and it's ongoing. So maybe like yourself, Nicola, if we can get we've got it into the hands of staff. Undertake what they call efficacy testing. Is it any good? Is it given the responses that we think is accurate in terms of our content that we've submitted? So the staff have done that bit, but we haven't got into the hands of learners yet. So if we can do that in September, it gives us next year to really say, well, what value has it been, and get some feedback.
Yes.
That's really
How much of a task would it be to roll that out to like a second department? Is it just a case of collate the stuff and put it in there now?
Yes.
You've kind of built the framework.
But you could see, you know, I do agree, Scott, is that is no small undertaking for schools. You know, like so suddenly, School of Creative would have to do the same thing. So you know, and across. So I think Simon's got about 30 to 40 staff, hasn't he? So you know, he's done it. It's a large scale effort to do that. He's obviously been curating those resources, but on a plus side, you know, let's assume everything failed. You know, he now has a handle on where are his most quality resources. If a new member of staff joins, he's got a library, a repository of these resources that are, you know, he's curated. So they would assist the workload of a new member of staff, and they simplify the sort of content. The resource making resources, I guess, new resources then for a member of staff in a different campus who's teaching the same course, for example, could use the resources of another member of staff. So even on that front, it's saving workload and is sharing good practice and good resources. So it's a really interesting thing, but it's early days to.
I think I know we have to report on these projects because it's part of the project and so on, requirements, but all of the interesting work sounds like it's going to happen the year after. So it would be really cool to, you know, keep in touch and hear more about these projects as they develop, because that's where all the interesting stuff happens, and that's where we learn the most, I guess. But this type of translatable solution, because all of these solutions can be translated to other colleges, so I'm hoping that will be then the next stage of trying to pass that along to everyone else.
I mean, the lessons that you might have learned from integrating with Tribal.
Yes,
every college using Tribal.
Everyone's going to want that.
So how, you know, it's the detail then, isn't it? How did you do it? What is the best way to do it? And then everybody can learn from that.
That's cool. So apart from these project things that we're trying to develop within our colleges, what tools are we using? What are you all using within your college? I know you are on the Google.
Yeah, so we so really the only tool that we kind of push and endorse at like central strategic level is Google Gemini.
Cool.
So mainly because the data is protected inside the tenancy. We can be sure that it's not used to train the model or viewed by human reviewers. So, you know, and it's also, you know, it's good enough, like we sort of said earlier, it's good enough for people to test the water, dip their feet, and so on. So that is the tool of choice, if you like. It's on for all staff by default. It's also on for learners who are over 18 at the moment. Fingers crossed that will change to be able to be turned on for under 18 soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's accessible by all staff. We haven't bought any tools centrally at all, so we haven't. There is like an upgraded Gemini license which I've got and a couple of my team have got just to kind of play around, but we haven't done that. Across the board, it's just all the free stuff.
What's the difference between the two licenses?
So, it's the integration with things like Google Docs and Gmail and Slides. So it's, instead of having to go out to a new tab and go to Gemini, it's just there in the sidebar, and it can query your documents and it can rephrase things for you within the document.
Gotcha.
Not entirely sure how Copilot works, but
it's similar to Copilot 365.
Yeah. But obviously, the free one is essentially just like ChatGPT. It's just a browser window that you type stuff in. But yeah, that's our baseline, and that's what we're sort of pushing.
That's cool. That's cool. Rory, Nicola?
So we were discussing this. So we're both Microsoft colleges, so exactly the same there. We've got Copilot and Edge in the Edge browser, which is free, and we have, in a similar way to you and some of your team, Scott, we've currently got about 66 people across the college exploring the Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is embedded in all the Microsoft apps. So we thought that a good starting point for that, like how do you decide who has it and who doesn't have it, because everybody wants it. We started with a digital innovation group, but that quickly extended to all of SLT and all of our college management team. So at the moment, everybody in a management position and above has that license. Feedback's been really good. They're all amazed about how we can help them write documents and whether it's all the way from emails through to analysing data, although we haven't explored the data analysis part of it that much. I think that seems to be a little bit trickier in Excel. So we're exploring those things, but yeah, that they are the primary tools. They, like myself and Tibi, they're the ones we communicate out. Only use those tools. Again, they're protected in the tenancy, just like yours.
So we're the same. We've promoting Copilot, and that's what we've done a lot of staff training on. We have prior to Jan, we have done training on ChatGPT as well, because it is so much in people's, that's what people are talking about. So with staff, we have done training, but now we've gone more to Copilot. But we've with the 365 Copilot, we're at the stage where we're actually only testing it with our infrastructure team, because we need to get our data permissions and things sorted before we roll it out to more teams in the college. We have invested in Teachermatic, which is an AI platform that has been sort of designed for teachers, so it's based on what teachers need, and the aim is to reduce workload. So we were part of a pilot with JISC and Teachermatic for that this year, and the feedback was very positive, so we have invested in further licenses now for the year ahead. So so that's one that we've been promoting with staff as well. I think what we like about that is that anyone can use it. You don't have to worry too much about your prompting, because it's the interface is very easy to use. It's a nice
a lot of drop downs, so minimal information and drop downs and
so the feedback has been positive with that. We've also been looking at we've done quite a bit of staff training promoting the AI tools within Canva, so Canva Magic. So we've done some work with that as well.
Cool. So you have quite a few different prongs happening there. I'm glad you mentioned prompting, because that's for us that's a big thing. You get people to interact with it, and then sometimes the more capable ones have no issue in chatting to it and making their own way. But a lot of other colleagues are struggling in terms of prompting or getting the right response. And there's a certain element of frustration there when you don't get it, isn't it? It's like, you're not giving me the right response here. The other day I was working with a colleague, and she was asking lots of very simple questions, like small questions, and then she ran out of tokens and she got signed down. So she was like, anger, pure rage happening there. So how do you tackle that? Do you do any training around prompting? Do you use a particular, I know you mentioned Dan Fitzpatrick, do you use prepared it, whatever.
So we haven't actually done the training on that yet. We're going to roll that out from September. I'm in the middle of kind of writing it based on, because we had a professional learning day with Dan last week, a week before. So I'm in the process of putting that together for staff, but I've used it actually.
Okay.
And I've used it since that talk, and yeah, I've had really good results actually. I like the there's a bit of it, isn't there, which you ask it to ask you questions, which would help it improve its response. I hadn't actually thought to do that before. Like, what questions would you ask me in order to help me better my answer? So I've used that quite a lot.
That's cool.
Which is, been actually really useful.
And you're looking to roll that type of guides out to staff next year?
Some version of that.
A version of it.
Yeah. We have kind of dabbled with a couple of, the prep type prompts. But, my advice generally to people is that you don't need to get your prompt exactly right. The idea is that you're supposed to chat to it. So just chat to it. And just, if it's wrong, tell it it's wrong. And then tell it to improve this little bit of it or whatever. So, I think a lot of people spend a lot of time carefully crafting this perfect prompt and then just take the first response. Whereas actually, I see it more of a conversation. I don't like that bit. Get rid of that. Try again. Yes. And you can just go on for hours, can't you? Because
you can. That's bad. The thing is, the refinement process then can take a while. Yeah, that's right. Cool.
Well, we've got an AI working group that we've developed this year in the college, which is staff from lots of different areas. And we had a conversation in the last meeting about prompt engineering, because we have run a few workshops on prompt engineering to staff, and we've been using the prep edit model as well. And there's also a very good resource, a prompting library, like a catalogue of prompts
that's cool.
Specifically for teachers. So we've been sort of sharing that as well. But somebody came in that meeting, one of the librarians said, but why are we doing prompt engineering? Everybody knows how to have a conversation. Isn't it just having a conversation? Why are we overcomplicating it with using models and prompt engineering? Even calling it prompt engineering can make it sound a lot more than actually what it is. You're having a conversation, which I thought, yes, she had a point. It is just having a conversation. But I think sometimes if somebody has got a prompt and they see it actually working, and you do get that light bulb moment, and you're like, I can do my scheme of work, a 34-week scheme of work within 10 seconds now, with the right prompt. Then I think having a few examples to share with staff, and then, but like you say, it is just having that, conversation back and forth, refining, and
with a few of our staff, especially towards this end of this year, we're doing a bit of training, and a few of them complained about the fact that the answers they were getting from the AI were too generic. And to use their term, wishy-washy. Well, there was a lot of W's in her answer. And she was quite frustrated at the fact that she wanted something very specific, but didn't know how to get that specificity. And probably running out of patience to do the whole refinement type of process. So I think there's room for it, but not always, is it? You don't need to follow a guide.
Yeah, I'd agree, Tib. I think it depends on what output you want.
Yeah.
I am actually a big fan of doing a little bit of. I've not used the prepared one, but I've used. There was one that I read about probably about a year ago. It must have been a year ago, because it was in a girl from Singapore won a GPT prompting competition in Singapore, and she used, and the Singapore government designed a prompting framework called CoStar. Now I remember it because it's super easy, so it's just context, objectives, I think style, some tone, audience, and I forget the last one, but it's basically, and it's so, what is the context, and if you do those types of things, the outputs are much more specific.
Yes,
they're much more detailed. So I like that one, because I could always remember the word CoStar. And there was another one that I came across. So the output you tend to get, because obviously as you experiment, you learn new. So you use it a bit. Whereas, okay, so you get, and even though it's quite a refined first answer, then yes, definitely develop the conversation, because it gets better and better. And I think Tibi, you was the first person I said that you'd say that. Have a conversation with it. It isn't like a search engine, and so that. And then I found another one. So the CoStar generally gives you quite broad. It's very creative, so it gives you a creative output because you're assigning an audience, etc. Target audience. But the other one is called Tibi, and I don't know if anybody's heard of that one, but that is much more specialized in terms of, and it works well, I think, for data analysis and other ones. So that is like, what does that stand for? I think it's task, instruction, do, don't, example, and content. In other words, and you use the one example at the end of yours. So Tibi's been very creative and he's created his own one.
Why not?
So Tib, go on.
Who are you if you don't have your own guide? Eh?
Just nobody. I rely on others, but Tibi says no. I'm going to create my own.
There are so many, and they have so many acronyms, and it does, like you said, there isn't really a right or wrong way.
No.
It's finding your own way, but some people need a bit of help to get there. So ours is just very simple. It's called SAFE. Again, another acronym, because that's what education needs, is another acronym. And ours is just setup, action. In terms of setup, is all around context, role, all of the things we mentioned before. So we try to make it as broad as possible, so it can have multiple queries. And the action, we just frame it as how wide you want it to be or how narrow. If you're wide, just drop the guide and just ask it a question. If it's a wide response, if you're looking for ideas, if you want something narrow, then set it up very well. Make sure you include whatever topics you want included, etc. F is for format. So if you want to have a particular format at the end, a lot of our staff use particular quizzing tools, and I'm trying to get them to have a quick import version into those. So if you use something like Kahoot, they have an Excel template. Microsoft Forms has PDF, which is the worst one ever, by the way. So trying to think of the format sometimes is useful. And examples, I think, is the most underused tool you have for prompting if you want something very specific. And if we're going to, if you roll the tape in the next 2 years, if we're going to have tools that do better feedback, etc., you might want examples that you want the AI to use for that particular narrow context you're giving feedback a student towards or something. So we're putting it out there. No one has to use it if they don't want to use it. We're trying to be relaxed about it. Like you said, we just need to chat to it. So you're getting people into the conversation.
I think that training, we did a bit of AI leadership training, was it only a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it, Tim? And I think it's interesting for a member of staff to try the one-shot question, and then to try a chain of thought question, or and literally they could see the difference in output immediately. And I think it's just once people realise, actually, the quality of my question and the setup or the context is important, then the output is way, way, way better. So I think there is a skill in using it. Yeah. It might be that skill disappears.
It might, yes.
And you just go...
All of these guys are just going to go out the window the cleverer it gets. You're right.
Yeah, because it'll get cleverer at understanding what you want.
Yeah.
Google actually have a fantastic resource on this type of zero-shot to multi-shot type of prompting. So I've read a couple of stuff there. So I thought Google's resource was better than Microsoft, actually, in terms of... it was much simpler and to the point.
I don't know if
Microsoft Learn is
if anybody's heard of this. I haven't discussed it with you, but it's like that particular lady, I think Sheila Teo was her name. She won that competition as a prompt in GPT-4. She used delimiters, and I don't know if you've ever heard of that term, delimiter, whereby she was basically probably quite a long prompt, but she's like setting it all up with that CoStar type. This is the context. You are this or. And then they're using like hashtags or almost like computer programming delimiters to put titles in to section out the. So she was using that as well, and I was like, "Whoa, like that's beyond my capability." But interested, I've never seen anybody else do that.
I've asked it to. Sorry, we're digressing here, but I've asked Copilot and GPT-4o a couple of times to create the prompt for me, and if you ask it to add delimiters, it does a much quicker and better job than you would. Right. But it does help to separate the information you want it to look at, especially if it's a complex type of task and you want it to look at stages, as in look here and do that, then look here and do this type of thing. But that's only for like a small segment if you want to be very clever about your prompting.
Some of the autonomous, AutoGPT, I haven't used that for a long time actually, but it was one of the ones whereby, it broke down the question you asked, which was usually a one shot. For example, like, help me write the cyber incident response plan. And then it would take that and it would break that down into tasks and subtasks.
Yes.
And it would go off and it would basically
look into
do
those
it
stuff.
all
Yeah,
for you.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think when those autonomous agents become more prevalent, suddenly, do I need to prompt engineer? I'll just tell it what I want, and it'll go away and do it all for me and bring it all back.
Yeah.
Yes.
But at the time when I was testing that, they were like running out of tokens halfway through. So you make it down to like a 15 task,
Yeah.
and then it'd say after about 7. After they delivered 7 of those answers, it would just say, "Oh, sorry, we're out of memory."
I think the interesting development there as well is when it kind of retains a memory
Yes.
of you, because every time I tell it that I'm in an FE college in Wales, I know you have to give it that context, but we
I
ain't
like
far
pina
off.
coladas. I'm in this.
It's going to know your tone.
Yeah.
It's going to scan your Google Drive files and all the things that you've written, and it'll write it like you.
Yes. Yeah.
We're not far
Which
off
is what
that.
we were discussing. That's the power of that Microsoft Graph, and in your case, the workspace for Google is once it has enough stuff to grab a hold of to understand who you are, and a memory.
Yeah.
Then yes, you're off to something. With our staff, we've been trying to do this prompt of the week type of video to try and
like
push it
that
out to
idea.
people. So we're hoping this year to try and get some staff to come up with ideas with prompt of the week. So again, we're almost going to finish, by the way, because we've been keeping you way too long and unfed. Put it on camera as well. They haven't eaten yet. We've just been feeding them caffeine. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything really cool you've been working with, or maybe I'm asking the wrong question here. But if there's something cool you want to share with anyone in terms of a particular prompt or something really cool you've created, you don't have to, by the way. If you haven't, that's absolutely fine.
Definitely not mine in any way, shape or form. But coming back to Pete, who I spoke about earlier, one of his parts of his action research project this year, he came up with the idea of like the game 2 Stars and a Wish. Have you heard of this? If I ask you with 2 stars and a wish, then you give me 2 things that are good, 2 truths and a lie.
Cool.
Two truths and a lie, 2 stars and a wish, same thing. So he sets up his prompt as if the bot is a quiz master.
Yes, yeah.
Comes up with the idea of kind of the topic for the student to quiz. And then the bot replies with 2 things that are right, 1 thing that's wrong, and you can go in and kind
Love it.
Yeah, he's got this whole sort of framework going on about how they can kind of take ownership, I suppose, of learning topics through a sort of game idea. It's quite neat.
Such a cool idea, isn't it?
It's neat.
It's exactly what you would want in terms of where teaching and learning actually meets this type of tech that can do that. It's brilliant.
Cool.
I love that. I love that. Anything you've been playing with?
Other than things I've shared with you, Tibi, and this isn't my discovery. Martin Compton at King's College London put me onto this, but there's a platform called Recast, and Recast is another AI tool that basically takes any article that you publish on the web or on the intranet and turns it into an audio podcast automatically. And that's quite cool because he was using that at King's College London because he was finding that ultimately staff haven't got time to read a big web page article.
Yes.
So it was condensing it into podcast format so that they could listen to their audio, and I don't know many staff who might listen to the audio either, mine, but at the same time it was, I think the only downside that I thought about it living in Wales was that it was all American accents. So
Yeah.
and some people totally disengage with that, don't they?
I do, especially as soon as I hear that voice, I'm like, that's just a bot. I don't need this. But yeah, I am honest, I do disengage when I hear that voice. I'm like, switch off straight away. Nicola, anything cool? Any jazz hands?
Not really. We've been experimenting with a bit of the image generators,
yes.
like DALL-E, and getting students to see what they can produce just by almost like an icebreaker. So rather than introducing themselves, they generate an image, and in the background is details of all their hobbies and
so creative.
and in a cartoon style image, and it's them, and you can see them going back and trying to regenerate. So that was quite a nice activity, using AI, and then they would just introduce themselves or see if the others in the group could guess what their hobbies were. And
that's really
tell
cool.
them a bit about We've also been experimenting a bit with ThingLink.
Yes.
And they've got some nice AI tools within that. I think it's Skybox they use for. They can generate 360 landscapes and worlds and things like that. So we've been
really
experimenting with those and using a bit of like gamification and escape rooms with these fantasy worlds. So that's been quite
I love
exciting as well. So yeah, looking for, like you say, more fun things to bring into the classroom. And
to me, that's the thing about AI, though, isn't it? Is that I actually get more excited about it as in generating ideas.
Yes.
I love that, and sometimes it's all well and good for finding information or knowledge that I totally haven't got, and say, oh, as an expert, you're giving me great advice or helping me do something. But sometimes that, like that ideation thing, and you know, I think I asked it just for a laugh, really. You know, could it help me invent something that has never been invented that would benefit the world? And it just went off on the most incredible conversation, which was super poetic. And that really shocked me, because like I did feel like I was having a conversation then with a person.
Yes.
It totally wasn't factual. It really went off with poetry, and it was immense. And I was just like, wow. I've never touched on that before with AI, you know. So yeah, it really is remarkable as a sort of, I mean, I know it freaks some people out here, doesn't it, when you call it a thought partner. But it is a thought partner. I love it for that.
Yeah.
It helped me do something that I never even, I haven't got the answers for this.
Yeah.
Come up with the answers for me.
It can make you,
because I'm
more creative, isn't it?
Yeah,
if you're
I
not
think so.
naturally a creative person.
I'm
which I'm
devoid
not.
of ideas.
No. Yes.
At this point in time. And usually at 4 p.m. I'm always devoid of
And
ideas.
even if you don't have that, it's cool to have something that sparks you. And if it is tangential, or if it's something out there, but it kind of frames it in a different way for you, I think that's useful in itself. And good thought partners, good people to talk to usually do that. And you've all definitely been doing that today. So thank you so much for your time. I know we've kind of run over, so it's actually 12:30. It's good. It's not bad at all. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing all your experiences with us. And I'm hoping we're going to do this again soon.
Thanks, Tim.
Forward to it. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks indeed.